for Guyana, David Granger, for Guyana, for better jobs and security, for David Granger, a partnership for national unity, Granger for Guyana, reducing the cost of living, I feel this is a unity thing, improving education, David Granger, he is the man, David Granger, he's standing tall, APNU, we welcome her, come out and vote and make your statement, Granger for president.
So we want national unity. We are brave for a better country. We don't want no disunity. Granger him are the best thing for we. Yes, we want the best for the youth them. We don't want to deceive and use them. Educate, motivate, and pollute them. Granger come recruit them.
Let me see you put your one in the air. David Granger, yes, you know we got clear a partnership for national unity. David Granger come for run the country. Granger are the choice for the people. Make we rise up out of the struggle. David Granger got the program done. No, say we got the plan. Hey! Everybody just fling your hands up. Hands up, yes, time to rise up. Everybody just fling your hands up. David Granger are the man for big up. Just vote David Granger for Guyana. David Granger for Guyana.
A partnership for national unity. It's a unity thing.
We need someone to take us to the start. Lead us to a place nice and warm, yeah. Who's gonna clean up all this mess? 19 years of endless stress.
Granger, take over this government.
You can hear it east, north, south, and west. People calling for the best.
Granger, we want you as president.
Mr. Granger is the man to lead this nation, to bring a better future for this generation, for build better schools, better education, for bring back the reputation. Now we want a government that is trustworthy, provide employment and maintain security. Whether you're black, Indian, Amerindian, Chinese, a good life for all you Guyanese. Be fed up of all the PPP.
Vote APNU. Youth for David Granger is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
But the government is not willing to sit down and talk to us about the projects. So what we have here is a failed Atlantic Hotel project. People up to now don't know who the investors are going to be. And secondly, we have a failed Amila Falls project. The road is not even being completed. We have a failed Shedijagan International Airport project. It may not have failed yet, but it's certainly in trouble. We have a failed one laptop for family project. We have a failed fiber optic cable project. We have a failed specialty hospital project. So there's failure all around, and the government must learn by now that we have been given too many blunders. Mr. Ramatai is becoming a serial blunderer. Every project on which he embarks seems to be marked with failure. And it's expensive failure. That is the problem for you, for us, and our children.
Granger will succeed. 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 Granger.
A pleasant good day. It's Sunday, the 12th of October in the year 2014. This is your Sunday live edition of Nation Watch Today. My name is Christopher Jones, thanking you for joining us on today's program. Today's program of Nation Watch is essentially a follow-up to a topic that we started some 3 weeks ago. And this is as it relates to the Ebola epidemic that is presently ravaging West Africa. With 1,400 persons that died thus far in West Africa, one person reportedly died in the United States in Dallas, and there are 10 of his family members who are presently in the institution of the United States seeking medical attention. With the threat of Ebola virus reaching the Caribbean, how prepared is Guyana? In studio with me to share on this topic are members of Parliament representing a Partnership for National Unity, Dr. Karen Cummins, and Dr. George Norton, who will share in the discussion. Ebola, Guyana is not prepared. First, we'll have them do some opening remarks for us, and then we'll go in depth into the topic. I want to start off with Dr. Cummins.
Okay, thank you once again for having me on this program, and to let the viewers know that Ebola. It's a threat not only to the U.S. and to the central parts of Africa, but also in the Caribbean as well. Chris, yesterday in my church, we prayed specifically for church leaders and members who minister to those affected by the Ebola virus. We prayed for those who have lost loved ones. We also pray that they will have a breakthrough in terms of treating Ebola virus, because there's right now no vaccines, and that God will put a halt to the spread of this virulent virus. So I just want the viewers, as we are discussing this topic, they can start praying.
That's right. That's
During the process, they should start praying. At the end of the program, keep praying that it doesn't reach our shores.
Very well, very well. Dr. Norton.
Good day to you, televiewers. It's a pleasure to be with you, but it's unfortunate that we have to be with you on this topic that really can best be described as an international public health emergency. And I say this so that you can understand that while it might be concentrated in all the deaths, and most of the deaths would be in West Africa, it is a disease that the whole world should take note of, and as a result, take necessary measures. What is important to note is the fatality rate of this virus infection. It's 50%. In other words, right now, the stats will show that with 8,000 persons being infected, 4,000 have died. And this is a serious situation. I want to join with my colleague in asking, those who are inclined to say a prayer, not only for Guyana, but for the world on a whole, because as she did say, there is no vaccine. Fortunately, there have been some breakthrough in treatment where persons came down with the virus and with a medication, a combination of 3 antibiotics, I think it's MVAP, has managed to bring back persons to life, so to speak. And it tells us that there's some light at the end of the tunnel in all of this. But what is important is for us to be prepared. And while you read in the day's newspapers and you're seeing efforts being made in Jamaica where $400 million allocated to the fight of the chikungunya and prepared for Ebola, the Ebola. And the Prime Minister herself was involved in cleanup campaigns in order to avoid this. We have Antigua saying that we're going to buy this laser thermometer so that when people pass through, Trinidad is even contemplating or having discussions on whether they will have carnival. You know what carnival is to Trinidad. That is to show how serious other countries are taking this. I am not seeing a similar response at the level of Guyana, and that is worrying.
Excellent. All right, viewers, at this time we're going to show you a quick clip in terms of news report that came out from West Africa. And again, the death toll thus far in West Africa as it relates to Ebola is 1,400 and climbing. We'll go to that clip and then we'll come back to our guests and we'll go in depth in discussing Ghana's preparedness or lack thereof Ebola. Stay tuned.
Fear of Ebola in affected countries and beyond is palpable. A man in Guinea suspected of having the gruesome disease was left lying in a city street for hours. Passers-by too scared to help, medical resources stretched thin.
Let them come and take him from here, because we are afraid.
More than 930 people have died in the outbreak. The military now helping combat the spread of Ebola in Sierra Leone. Liberian soldiers are clamping down on travelers. No one with a fever allowed in or out of the country. And in Spain, health officials reassuring the public there is little risk of Ebola spreading from an infected priest evacuated from Liberia, now in isolation at a Madrid hospital.
He is stable with fever, and the most important thing is that Father Miguel is not hemorrhaging. This is a sign of a positive prognosis.
The World Health Organization will soon decide if the Ebola outbreak is an international public health emergency, which could initiate a more global response. The CDC is operating on its highest alert level, the first time since the 2009 swine flu pandemic. The agency's director briefed representatives on Capitol Hill.
We, with our partners, have been able to stop every Ebola outbreak to date, and I'm confident that if we do what works, we will stop this one also. But it won't be quick and it won't be easy.
Dr. Thomas Frieden says tried and true infection control methods, diagnosis, isolation, and tracing patient contacts are the best way to end the outbreak. Cindy Sharp, Associated Press.
As the medical world continues to grapple with Ebola, there are growing calls for experimental medicines to be used more widely. 2 American aid workers infected with the virus appear to be improving after receiving an unapproved medicine, ZMapp, ahead of their evacuation back to the United States.
This is an emergency compassionate use situation. This is not a well-controlled laboratory study. A lot of work remains to be done to see how it worked and why and how quickly. The apparent speed of recovery was faster than I would have expected, so there may be a lot of things that we still don't understand about the virus.
The antibodies were originally harvested from mice that had been injected with parts of the virus. Experiments on monkeys suggest the antibody cocktail may reduce fatalities when given after exposure to the virus. The proteins are then grown in specially modified leaves of tobacco, which act like a photocopier, reproducing larger amounts.
I do agree there's no vaccine. Treatment is experimental. The real way of stopping it is by transmission of the virus, which we know quite well how to do. It's just spreading that message and then providing basic supportive care to people who are being treated at the moment. What we must remember, it's a very isolating and stigmatizing disease, and people deserve to be treated with care and concern, which is what we're all committed to.
The Spanish government is sending a specially equipped plane to Liberia to evacuate a priest who is infected with the virus in the capital city, Monrovia. The World Health Organization will announce on Friday how it plans to slow down or halt the global spread of a virus that has claimed 900 lives in West Africa since February. Enda Brady, Sky News.
In March 2014, a rapidly evolving outbreak of Ebola viral disease started in forested areas of southeastern Guinea, a West African country. The drivers of the infection are fruit bats, which are considered to be natural hosts of the Ebola virus. The virus is transmitted when a person comes in contact with the blood or body fluids of an animal or person who is infected.
It's transmitted by bats, by fruit bats, particularly those who hit the animals. And then there are also records or documentation that it may be transmitted by chimpanzee and some wild animals anyway. But people who handle these animals or who have to do with these animals should be very careful in handling them.
Hand gloves, high standard of hygiene, washing, very important. Even people that are engaged in pig farming. Why pigs? Because the fruit bat is usually found in places where pigs are reared. So pig farming is important as well. So those who are involved in those activities should be aware and then take precautions, protect themselves, wear gloves.
The symptoms of Ebola.
All right, welcome back. Those were, of course, news items that were carried as it relates to the outbreak from West Africa. But you should note that those news items were recorded sometime before. The death toll has indeed moved from 900 to 1,400 persons. And of course, as mentioned, to those of you who just joined the program, in studio with us is members of Parliament and representing a Partnership for National Unity, Dr. Karen Cummins and Dr. George Norton will share in a discussion of Ebola. Lady, gentlemen, with the reports that are out, 1,400 persons died. We see Ebola reach as far as the United States of America with 1 death. And now we have 10 persons who are family members to that individual are now hospitalized. How prepared are we in Guyana with Ebola? But for the benefit of the viewers out there, outside of fruit bats as we would have seen in that clip, how is it spread? How is Ebola spread?
Well, first of all, let me say that the first outbreak came in 1976 in 2 countries, one in Sudan and one in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where it was located near the Ebola River, hence the name, the Ebola virus. And quite true, yes, it is affected through fruit bats, but just to mention, it's not fruit bats alone. You've got gorillas, you've got chimpanzees, you've got monkeys, antelopes, porcupines, you know you have that. But what is also important to state is that it can be transmitted, or one can become infected from the dead bodies of these animals. And once it gets into the human system, then it's body fluid from one person to the other, inclusive of the clothing of the person who is infected. If the body fluids get in contact with the clothing of that person, and somebody take that clothing and put it on, they can become infected too. So it's a
That's what
serious
is spread.
situation, right?
So essentially, it's a person-to-person contact.
Direct contact.
Right.
Yes.
After you get it from the animals, and so on.
Okay. Dr. Cummins, person-to-person transmission. How do we prevent? What are some of the steps that we should take to prevent the infection?
Well, definitely is infection control. We, as you go about your daily work, especially healthcare workers, they are most vulnerable and at risk. And so you have to ensure that you practice good infection control, as I said before. So you ensure you have your gloves, you have your mask, you have there is a particular protective gear that you normally put on for the entire, from head to toe, a particular suit, as we call it. By the way, as I'm on that, I need to let the health care workers know that their fingernails, persons use these artificial fingernails. We'll try to avoid them, or just about a 1/4 inch length, to prevent any transmission and from person to person. But as Dr. Norton rightly said, it's definitely from contact to contact, from blood from fluids, be it blood, secretion, semen, whatever. It's being transmitted like that. So definitely healthcare workers have to be very careful. They have to definitely practice good hand washing technique, infection control procedures.
Signs. Same, but how do I know that one is infected with Ebola, not opposed chikungunya, or just regular?
Well, it's different. So, with respect to the symptoms, first of all, it can show up between after the second day of infection to 21 days. And that is the case we had in Brazil, where everything went up.
Yes.
The 21 days has passed and he still is not positive, and so on. But it's a virus, and most, that the pertinent question you ask, most viruses tend to manifest themselves in similar fashions, like high fever, headaches, joint and muscle pain, sore throat, weakness, stomach pain, lack of appetite. But what is important in the Ebola virus is the hemorrhaging. You either hemorrhaging through all the exposed mucous membranes, or even in the stool. And that's the bad thing about the Ebola virus. The hemorrhaging and so on. That is the kind of manifestation you have.
Okay. I want to touch now. I want to home in on this. Okay, we learned of how it spread, how to prevent it, and what are the signs that we can look for. Now, we note that globally, Ebola, the spread, the epidemic, has gotten international attention and attention from all of those countries. Right here at home, if you want to say that in the Caribbean, we see, and as you mentioned earlier, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Portia Simpson Miller, she's actually leading the preventative measures in Jamaica. She's so far calling the Jamaican Defense Force. We saw the persons have been trained abroad and so forth. Similarly, we have Trinidad. They're contemplating, based on information that they would receive from the World Health Organization, whether or not they will have Carnival 2015. Even in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, preventative measures have already been put in place, and in fact they are reporting that at the end of this month they will already establish their isolation unit. What is happening in Guyana? We've heard some weeks ago just a pronouncement that measures are being put in place at our port of entries. Now, Guyana has a few port of entries, but Guyana's borders are completely open. Is open sepulchre, if you want to say that. As persons in the medical fraternity in Guyana, what are some of the system, other than what I alluded to, that we saw some weeks ago from the Minister of Health, that is being put in place presently, that you are aware of, if any?
I think they may be working along with these international, maybe PAHO and I don't know, CDC, Center for Disease Control, in terms of the port entry, in terms of having maybe thermometers and maybe have maybe checklists to say, well, the patient has this particular symptom or so. But that may be done maybe just at Georgia, the Timeri, and maybe at Ogle. But I'm not sure. Definitely, as you said, alluded to, if at Brazil and at Venezuela, the Essequibo there, if it's been done, I'm not sure if it's done.
You know what is interesting, Chris, is Jamaica. They got the Jamaica Defense Force involved.
On board.
It tells you how serious these people are. Today, in today's newspaper, we heard that a program for training police officers as pilots has been on the on the standstill for the longest while. Our borders, we've got open borders to Venezuela, to Brazil, to Suriname, and the ocean is there wide open. I mean, if one is going to be worried about their borders, it should be Guyana, and then Brazil. Brazil is just facing West Africa. And those persons who are coming in like the one seeking refuge, refugee status, so they can end up easily here in Ghana, and it cannot be the Ministry of Health, it cannot be any one entity. It has got to be a national effort.
That's right.
Where surveillance is concerned, where case management is concerned, where contact of tracing, contact tracing, where you have telling persons, the safe way to go about. It's got to be a national effort. I, in my work, instructing medical students and nurses here at the Georgetown Hospital, and I want to repeat this on the air, and not only for the medical students but anybody who has to deal with patients and so on. That, when you listen to the professional boxers, the last thing the referee says to them before they start boxing is, defend yourself at all times. Defend yourself at all times. If you feel that in order to treat this patient, to manage this patient, you need a pair of gloves and you don't have it, then I think if you're going to defend yourself, you might be right not to attempt to. Okay? Especially if it's supposed to be provided. If you think that this person is sneezing and coughing and the body fluids might get you, you need a mask, then you should insist that the mask is provided. So I am appealing to health caregivers and persons who have to deal with people, that those are some of the rights that they must not neglect. Okay, and we've got to play our part. We just can't sit back and hope that we've got to insist.
That's right.
We've got to insist that those measures are in place.
We definitely have to be proactive, but I'm wondering, right now some cases in the hospital, there are 200 beds and 300 beds. I'm wondering when this becomes, God forbid, if it becomes overwhelming, what will happen? Do we have sufficient isolation units, to quarantine these people? Do we have, it becomes, doctor talk about goggles and masks and so forth. Do we have a stockpile? I'm not too sure about this.
Because that's the thing too, because you see in many of the Caribbean countries, that is what they're telling you. That
Trinidad has put aside, had constructed a particular area.
That's right.
We're hearing about a hangar, that you're going to put the whole plane into this hangar. Is that acceptable?
No, well, you spoke about the protective gears for our frontline personnel. God forbid someone turns up at the Georgetown Public Hospital. The nurses, the doctors there are unaware that this is a potential case of Ebola. And then they now are exposed to that because there's no protective goggles, gears, and so forth for them. How frightening should the Guyanese people be in light of chikungunya? That we saw at one stage, there was public education about it, and then when it went viral, everything went silent. And it was the chikungunya issue was a similar case like that of the gastroenteritis. How could we trust government? How fearful should the Guyanese people be about Guyana's response or preparedness for Ebola?
Well, they should be fearful indeed, because it's going to cause panicking, it's social disruption, and it's a public health issue. But I do agree that they may not be able to do it alone. But everybody needs to come multi-sectoral. The police, the army, the defense force, the police. The communities.
That's right.
The communities no wonder we need local government elections, so the communities can take some control of their area.
That's right.
To be part of this process.
That's right.
So it's a situation one where we definitely have to hope and pray for the best And but we'll have to continue awareness, keep promoting and educating our public.
Educating our public.
about
I mean,
it. Yeah.
take for instance, the reggae artist Luciano from Jamaica has postponed his trip to Africa. Another artist from I think the United States decided that he will postpone, but all of that serves to bring the message home that this thing is dangerous, and we have, we should not wait until it's on our doorstep before we start taking action. It could disseminate Guyana. This is a reality. In the United States, with all the health system and so on, they're making all of that effort. And if you note carefully, the countries, Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia, those are countries that, they've got a very, very low standard of development. They've been unstable, they're way down in the, economic strata. Which is exactly the situation Guyana is in, So one could imagine what will happen here. It appeared to have been an urban infection in certain cases, but then in other in other parts of Africa, you find that it appeared in a rural area. So it's not like the chikungunya where it was more in the coastal area. This doesn't have any from there. Go in the interior as well as in.
Exactly. All right. On that note, I will ask the operator to bring up a few photographs that an investigation team that went out earlier this week got from one of the health centers. Operator, you have those photographs ready? Those pictures? Yeah. Okay. So he's going to put it up, and I'm going to speak in the background about them, what exactly we're seeing here, because we have the Georgetown Public Hospital that is our premier institution. And we saw reports in previous months and weeks and so forth about the Georgetown Public Hospital not having sufficient beds for patients and so forth. Now, this is not far out, but this is Region 4. Okay. Now, this is the condition of the Tamari Health Center, right there at the Suze Dyke Junction. Now, you see the water tank and the pipes and so forth there, but there's absolutely no running water. That's the state of the washroom facility. And the reports is that the doctor at the Tamari Health Center would have to literally fetch 2 buckets of water on a daily basis to treat her patients at the hospital, at the Tamari Health Center. There's no running water there. There's the sink, there's the all of that, but she has to fetch this water. Now, looking at the state, that's the outside. That's how she gets water for her patients at the Tamari Health Center, and it's completely overgrown with bushes. Patients go there to speak about mosquitoes biting them on a daily basis. I mean, right there is where the chikungunya is being transmitted to them. This is Region 4. Now, what is the state of health institution in our far-flung regions where there's supposed to be these health huts? How prepared, how would these health huts be in a position to treat patients with any similar like symptoms?
Only recently we were in Region 8 at a place called Mountain Foot. And I remember carefully when the child fell into the pit latrine in Region 1 in Morocco sub-region and died. I made a statement saying that there's no school in Georgetown that has pit latrine. Likewise, there should be no school with pit latrines in any part of the country.
That's right.
But that was in Parliament, and it was years ago. You still have it. One would say there might be a problem with water. I go back to Mountain Foot. Mountain Foot has a natural supply of pure water coming down the mountains, just flowing into that, with high pressure. Yet you have pit latrines built there. All you had to do is to allow this to pass through and control it, and it tells you that somewhere along the line we're going through the motion with regards to the way we have our schools and our health facilities and all the agencies, how the infrastructure is in place. We read in the newspaper of a parent complaining in Region 3 of her child becoming infected because of the use of the school toilet facilities.
That's right. That's true.
So it's not only in the health center. We remembered what happened in Linden, the so-called state-of-the-art Linden Hospital complex, where the patients had to
be evacuated because of an overflowing of sewage. Only recently, and I have the photographs to show you 2 weeks ago probably, where the new facilities at the Georgetown Public Hospital, the inpatient facility was flooded out. And you go and you see the sisters and the brothers, and these are nurses,
Yes.
you know, pumping water out and washing water and so on. And that can only be because the work was not properly done. The thing about it, you know, we heard the minister speaking about value for money. You know, it was a phrase that he caught onto. And that certainly is not a reflection of value for money.
Exactly.
You know, in the hospital. And these are nurses who has gone to work, you know, you see the sister, you see everybody involved in clearing out this. And it wasn't because it wasn't spoken to about before. But when you talk about these things, the administrator or the chief executive officer reaches you and says, you know, you're being, let's say, destructive. You're you know, ridiculing you for saying things that is a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not here to pinpoint anybody, but you have to, you know, let them know that the work is not properly done, that things are not functioning in the correct way.
All right.
But coming back to the Timeri, the
Health
health
center.
center there, I mean, that doctor would she would have to leave her station.
That's right.
To go where, and so many things could happen on the way.
That's right.
This disease will kill you in a week.
That's right.
You know, and so I'm wondering, because I recall I think the incident in Texas there, where the nurse said, someone said, I think it's alleged that she maybe she was glove up, but then she just put her hands to her nose, you know, just touch her in her body. So we have to be very careful, because you may touch persons, you know, unconsciously. But it's not it's something doable. It's not rocket science. I mean, just a phone call away, and to get this thing done to repair that within a good time.
Exactly.
Timely and very timely.
Because the reports that we got from residents there in the Timeri Sioux-like area is that the Timeri Health Center has been in that condition for months. And they applaud the doctor there, because on a daily basis, as I mentioned, she leaves, she fetches buckets of water. Now, these persons, like that doctor there at Timeri and throughout the country, these are our frontline persons, frontliners. And I mean, your first line of defense are these individuals. If anything happens to them, then all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
Because unaware, they don't have the protective gear, they go home, they infect their families. And when you're looking for health workers, all of them are infected. Because I know in one of the countries, you have health workers who are protesting right now because they don't have the necessary gears to protect themselves. And as such, some of them have resigned, some of them refuse altogether to work unless they're protected.
And you're supposed to also have changing room, so when
All
you
of
finish
that.
there, you don't take home that same
Exactly.
to the home. You know?
Exactly. Now, the question is that, I mean, on the side of not having people there think that we're just here to bash the government and so forth. What are the recommendations, immediate, short-term, long-term recommendations the Partnership for National Unity, yourselves as medical personnel, would recommend to the government, Ministry of Health, and so forth?
Now, first of all, I don't want to read about Trinidad, about Antigua, about Jamaica, what they're doing. I want to hear okay? We hear our own Rafi Khan, died with a chikungunya complication.
Yeah.
Irrespective of where that happened. But what we should have learned our lesson from the chikungunya, where after a certain point there was a blackout of information.
That's right.
When you tune in to BBC or to CNN and
Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera.
Constant.
It's ongoing.
All the time.
That's right.
Photographs all the time. You check our newspapers and we're not.
Or your television
or your
station.
television,
Yeah.
you're not getting anything. So I'm going to stress on education. You can have it. You can get it in the schools. You can get it on the radios. You can get it in the newspaper. But we've got to know what it is. We always talk about washing our hands. It can never be, it can never be more emphasized than at this present time. But you don't only need to wash your hands; you need something to wash your hands with.
That's right.
And I don't know if the reason is because we might not be able to let's say, provide the means of doing certain things that is supposed to be done. That's why we're not saying that it should be done, but give the persons that option of knowing what this Ebola virus is all about.
That's right.
Because, you know, ignorance can be a bad thing. We can create an unnecessary panic, which we might be guilty of in certain countries and in certain societies. But I would prefer for us to err on the side of caution. Okay, let us know what this thing is all about so that we can be careful.
Very well.
In addition to the public awareness and education that Dr. Norton spoke about, I think in terms of training, capacity building,
yes,
these ad hoc trainings and short-term training, we need like career training, long-term training in this regard. Also, I'm not too sure how much resources is being put, as you mentioned earlier, how much Jamaica and others are putting towards this.
That's right. 500 million Jamaica.
Oh my goodness! I don't know.
million.
Nobody's saying how much is being targeted.
In
How
Ghana.
much in there. So we talk about public health awareness, education, capacity building, funds, resources being allocated to this area. Our response, our disease monitor, our surveillance. I'm not too sure how far we are in terms of this ongoing, surveillance. We need to step up on our surveillance.
Yeah. No,
Just before you go, please. We were here before.
That's right.
And we spoke about the chikungunya virus. And we heard, and this was not because we spoke about it, but we were repeating, that persons were going to be identified to go and get trained.
That's right.
Up to last Friday, from persons who supposed to know that I inquired after, they don't know if anybody was going to be trained. And where they're going? To England? No. How long are they going for? 2 years, 3 years training? No. They're going to Trinidad for probably a week training, and we haven't sent anybody as yet as far as
Right.
right.
As they would say, right across the
Right.
pond.
I mean, and from the information I gather, it might be, but it means that the person who's supposed to know, they don't know of any training going, taking place. And the other thing about it is, we need to have adequate facilities at our laboratory that exists, so that we can do certain tests.
On that same note with the tests, because we were also told, as related to chikungunya, that samples would have had to been sent to Trinidad.
Yes.
Then we learned that we have the equipment here, but the personnel are not have not been trained.
Exactly.
Well, let me on that aspect. Has anyone? Well, you just mentioned that no one has been
I
trained.
said, but when you speak to the technician, they will tell you that one of the tests that can be done is the ELISA test, which has been done for 30 years in Guyana. The ELISA test is nothing new. But they need the reagents to do it, and probably the patron to guide themselves by. So, I think it might be irresponsible behavior on the part of the authorities for not putting these things in place.
Is it just incompetence at the level of Minister of Health?
Well, I remember carefully the president making a statement that he's questioning whether the right persons are in place.
That's right.
One
would want to question that now.
This is quoting the president. Okay, if the right persons are in place, I think that answers his question. The problem, however, is for him to take the necessary action.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. They spoke sometime back about training persons at our port of entries. I don't know if these persons are psychics or whatever, that they can just simply look at an individual and determine whether or not that person is infected with Ebola. Now, if I'm trained that I'm at the port of entry and I'm supposed to be looking for persons with symptoms like Ebola, I have no protective gear. I don't even have this laser thing that I saw. Thermometer that Trinidad and these other countries have already acquired. They're not here in Guyana. So right away, these same persons that have been trained to go at our port of entry, we're putting them at risk. Because likely they will physically touch someone, and that's how the virus is spread, by sweat glands or whatever the case be.
But you can't, it's impractical for you to go and test it
the temperature of everybody unless you have such a sophistication as the laser thermometer.
That's right.
Where, so long as you
Yes,
pass
pass
there,
through.
you get the temperature
Automatically.
right, and you know at the cutoff point. But of course, you also have to look at your manifest of who's coming from,
From
where.
where?
You know, and in Guyana, I don't want to label any specific group of persons, but we've got persons here from the African continent.
That's right.
Besides that, they're coming from all parts of the world.
That's right.
You know, and they you know, like the fellow from that went to Brazil.
Guinea.
He touched down in Morocco, and then also I think the Argentina
Before you came. Mercy. All right, viewers, we want to hear from you. We want to provide an opportunity to you, for you to pose questions and, of course, make comments, and perhaps you may have some very good recommendation that we can well, essentially pass on to government. We are discussing Ebola and Guyana's preparedness or lack thereof.
While we wait on the caller, Chris, I would like to take this opportunity to say that I would have expected the developed world, granted that China and Britain has come on board, Russia is also working on a vaccine, and the United States might have eventually got that ZMapp, you know, drug going. I think we need much more, a better response from these developed countries. In Africa, in these poor underdeveloped world. But I would like to single out Cuba.
Yes.
Cuba has sent already 165 healthcare givers, including 62 doctors and 103 nurses. But not only that, they are also preparing 296 to send after them. You know, I mean, that is commendable. If we could get that kind of response from the United States or from Great Britain or from China, you know, then we hope that those unfortunate persons in that area, you know, who probably don't even know whether they will see tomorrow or not, okay? Because while it might only be around that West African coast for now, it can eventually reach all over. And that's where we have to keep it under control from the source.
Very
its
well.
origin.
Very well.
The PR person from the government will have to take the lead in that area too, to
Yeah.
sensitize and to bring others up to date with what's happening here.
And you know, there's always the saying that charity begins at home. So if perhaps these countries see that Guyana is actually making an effort to protect itself, then perhaps
But
we
Chris,
could-
I was wondering.
I'm sorry, Doc. Hello, caller? Hello? All right, that person's not
Yeah, I
right.
was just wondering, when would we move from the ordinary to the extraordinary? Do we have no researchers here that we can start making vaccines and testing, doing clinical trials? I mean, you know, we need to go a step higher now.
Yeah,
You know, to raise the bar a little. You know, start thinking about vaccines and you know, improve our laboratory research and those kind of things. I think we need to really step up in our healthcare system. You know,
But I think it brings
and
back
the health faculty.
It
and
brings back the question that the president himself had asked, whether or not we have the right persons in the right places. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, panel.
Good afternoon.
I read a book, right?
Uh-huh.
And this book is named Europathy, the world's most powerful holistic therapy. And it shows you clearly that all these sicknesses that attack the immune system, only urine could prevent them from the disease, enhancing its potency. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfonso. Urine?
I didn't follow the trend.
Yeah, in my clinical experience, I came across patients who came to me and said that they had an infection in the eye or a trauma or something, and they were advised to use urine. I'm seeing it on the air right now. Please do not use urine in your eyes, from my experience.
Very well.
I've heard about that in terms of like psoriasis and so on, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure about other diseases.
Good day, caller.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good
afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to your comments upon the Ebola sickness. I am a person who is visually impaired, and in my own sense, I'm scared of anything that I am unable to see. I can only hear, but know it not where or what is coming at me. And listening to this Ebola thing,
sure is a great scare in my heart to know here is something that is coming, and in my country, we are not even a wink in doing anything in the preparedness so that the citizens them can get an understanding as to how or where to guard themselves against what is coming. But I'm hoping that listening to you and the ears who are supposed to be listening to protect this country are also listening to you, because they tend, when you people speak, to say that you are creating political mischief.
Yeah.
And I hope that this is what will bring them to the senses to know that what you all try to do and try to do at all times is to bring a correctiveness to the system in Guyana, that we can all work together in the prevention, the preservation, and everything of our nation. And the borders that we have wide open are with the doors open and ready for the acceptance of that deadly virus. I hope that in my blind insight, I can get a message to you to understand that we who are most vulnerable, because we won't be able to know where to go, how to move, what to do when you say run. You can just sit down right there and accept it. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Merci, indeed. Indeed, because all of these are category of our population that we have to take into consideration.
Just to emphasize, repeat for emphasize, they call it the silly season. It so happened that this Ebola outbreak coincides with it. Genuinely, we're not here to create any political mischief. Okay? We have a real situation, a real crisis on our hands.
That's right.
And as I said before, we should never wait until it's on our doorstep, or it's knocking at our front door before we start taking necessary measures.
Exactly. Because the reality is that you can be elected government and die with Ebola. That's real.
But think of what can happen to Guyana as a nation.
That's right. That's
As I said, it can disseminate Guyana in a question of weeks.
Yeah, just 750,000 people, yes. Yeah.
Good afternoon, caller.
Hi.
Good
afternoon, my brother.
Good afternoon.
I'm also watching your program, and I really like what you are speaking about. But the main concern is that what you're trying to say is that we should be alert of this Ebola.
Yeah.
But some of us don't think it's serious, especially the ministers and the government. All what they're thinking about, making money and put up 5-star hotels, which they're supposed to be looking at the people's interests, especially the health department. A few show y'all had y'all were showing that into the minister of health does not provide the clinic them with efficiency drugs for patients. So how would they manage this crisis that's coming?
That's right.
I would also like to say that in truth, Tomiri Clinic really in a bad state where you spoke about, but the government is not doing anything about it, because like was a see, what they're concerning is money, and they does not know when enough means enough. But then likewise on the health department, look at rainfall a few days ago. Georgetown Hospital in front of the main building flooded with water. The city council, Green and Suban, they fight for position, which they're supposed to be concerned about people's safety in Georgetown, especially in the health disease. Chikungunya is one, but they does not have no cure for that, and so Ebola does not have no cure. So likewise you were saying that our Guyana borders are free open, that anybody can come from any direction, land at public hospital, where doctors and nurses does not have the full equipment to deal with this kind of situations. So the ministers really need to look at these things and put into place, not wait till it reaches to your doorstep and then you're going to do something about it.
That's right.
What I'm like is that you are doing a well job and you're concerning about people, not only yourself.
I also concerned about people. But then the ministers are not really concerned about people and concerned about their health and safety. All they concerned is about themselves. But what the message what I really want to give is that we as concerned people about our citizens in Guyana, I think the ministers and the government should be supposed to be looking at the interests of the people, not for themselves. Likewise now, I just watched this BBC News where one person was just contaminated by just touching you.
That's right.
And eventually, it can be spread to worldwide, but our government is not doing nothing about it because if they cannot get water in the clinic, they could manage something like this.
No mercy.
No, they cannot. So I think they should open their eyes and prepare for this coming disease.
Very well. Thanks a lot for coming through, Colin.
Okay.
Chris, I'm wondering to know. I mean, that's just one
Health center
that you actually know about.
Yeah.
I mean, that the Temeri, I think, comes under the aegis of the regional health system. But there are several other health centers in the East Coast, and about that. I'm wondering if similar things are happening there.
Well, in a case that we were Monday at Charity, there was a guy that brought his wife from Morocco. They went to the Charity hospital, and the doctor simply there told him they don't have the medication. They gave him a prescription to purchase on the outside and asked him to return sometime later. Now, he came from Morocco. He would now have to accommodate himself and wife, of which he has no money. So he's told us, myself and Annette Ferguson, that he's going to go back to Morocco and they're going to resort to
traditional
traditional
because it's happened. Only recently there was a meeting in Bartica where one of the officials from the administration there say there was no Panadol in Bartica in the Bartica hospital. That's a regional health hospital.
That's right.
Now, I don't know, but it is the responsibility of the government to get money.
That's right.
They have shown us that money is not a problem where projects are concerned. The question is spending it wisely. The priority, we have a problem with that. If, as the caller did say, if you can get this money to build a 5-star hotel, then we should have a proper system in the let's say the acquisition of medication and distribution. But only recently, I mean the 10th month of the year, we're hearing that we don't know who won the tender, or the Ministry of Health didn't know who got the tender for the procurement of medications and medical products, and this is the PPPC in over 20 years of governance. When are they going to get it right?
Right now, that's right.
When are they going to get it right? If at this time we're not getting it right, we're not saying that that there are no medications there, but there's a system. And when we hear the junior finance minister saying that you must do this as though he just woke up from some sleep he had, not knowing that they don't tell whoever bid for the tender the reason why they lose it, why they never had it, and things like that, and so on. But we've got a problem. We've got a problem, and it is continuing for the longest while. This sole sourcing that is taking place in Guyana, and we're not learning. We're not trying to put system in place, and it openly demonstrates that somebody just don't care.
That's right.
But I echo the sentiments with you that resources must be placed in the national level as well as the regional level as well, because you talk about Panadol, but in this case, you need care and supportive treatment like oral rehydration, because you have to rehydrate these patients. And many times you don't have rehydration salts and infusion sets and infusions and so forth. So they will have to definitely put some more money into the system if they're going to have a crisis like Ebola.
Caller, go ahead.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good day, sir.
And the member of panel. I want to reiterate, if we have a government doesn't want us to know what is going on, for instance, there is an issue with Glenn Lal and his papers. We couldn't get the information that you're talking about. I read it also yesterday from Kaichur News. There's nothing I found in Chronicle. And they want to cut off Kaichur News. So then I don't know what's going on. Look at the people with the flood, right? These are sticking plaster people. They're not proactive. They're just reactive.
That's right.
Right? And you name any other area. Even people who have the ability to do work and who can help you going about doing the things, you're not being employed, right? And all these other things. Where are we going? Is a government that should be kicked out instantly? not being attacked or being looked after. I'm very passionate about it.
Very well. Very well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having come, caller. I'll continue to take the calls, and then we're going to have wrap up and response segment from them. Good afternoon, caller. Hello.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you and your panel. I don't know. I just came from church. I just wanted to know if somebody mentioned whether we're going to have matrimony still or what, wherein the disease is moving from place to place. I think I heard that Trinidad would have postponed the carnival.
Well, Trinidad, not postponed, but rather the committee that is responsible for Carnival, they are looking at that potential. Based on the World Health Organization's providing information to them, they will then make a determination.
Okay, so have we attempting to go down that road?
Well,
do you know?
The most we know is so far is that Friday gone we launched our matrimony 2015.
Well, Chris, this is very, very serious, and at this point in time, I think that we have to look at our situation in this country at another level. If nothing is going to look towards securing our people in this country, if we're going to just look at having these facilities rather than having people in a country that is safe.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
So if you could just expound on that for me, and if other people can call in to share their view concerning it,
Very
I would love to hear. Thank you very much.
Thanks, lad. We'll continue to take the calls, and then we'll respond shortly thereafter. All right. Quick, Dr. Norton, I saw you wanted
it just goes to show. Here it is, Trinidad. I mean, our matrimony is in no way compared to Trinidad. Trinidad, the whole life of Trinidad is sort of, centered around the carnival. But they're prepared to start discussion.
That's right.
That's right. They're showing the interest. Of course, day before that, some time ago, with the polio vaccine and the polio virus, the polio rather, they had to postpone the carnival. We're not even hearing anything.
No discussion.
No discussion at all.
All right, let me just go back. Caller, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, sir.
This is where you come right back to the government. And everything we doing here. They just destroy the old morals of the people and everything, and nobody getting nothing done right here. Now with this disease we got bad over, we getting people from Africa steady. A lot of Africans is over in Brazil and things. Just up to the other day, but the case is some serious there yet. But I know that with Guyana, we get a terrible problem because how they run in this country, they know what they're doing.
That's right.
They just do it, shape bigotry and racism and everything they got now with. A robbing the nation. They face rob.
All right, thanks for coming to call. All right, we'll try to snap in two last callers, and then we'll have response and wrap up. Good afternoon. All right, missed that caller. Good afternoon, caller. All right, good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, it is simple. The ministers don't thief all what they had to thief. If Ebola reach here, all of we dead. They gone on a plane and gone with it reasonably safe. All of we dead. One man said already that he's glad if they have an epidemic here. So people could feel Guyana and get to the
City Council. That's right.
But we just ask for you to get, you just get Father don't sleep. You see, we just checking going here to tell you they got 5,000 years. But they forget for certain you just don't have to all alone. You understand? So don't worry all there about that. If you get Ebola, all we dead.
All right, we'll take one last call and then we'll have the wrap up. But indeed, the caller's right because he was speaking about the former Minister of Local Government, Kelwan Lal, at a press conference, hoping and praying that an outbreak can occur in the capital city just so they can remove the city council. Last caller, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, dear.
I'm watching the program for the longest while now. And I would just like to say that Guyana is a very poor country.
Yeah.
And if Ebola is to hit Guyana and they are not even putting into place to give us precautions or nothing, not even garments, nothing, I don't know what really the government doing. I don't know what to say.
Thanks for coming to call. All right. Dr. Norton, Dr. Cummins.
Just to let you know that it might not be such an easy thing for those who can afford it to think that they will jump on a plane and go to some other place, because don't forget, the other place that you're going to might not accept you.
That's right.
Especially where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But, just to close off by saying that, community engagement, getting everybody involved, is the key to a successful controlling of this Ebola outbreak. There's no other way of doing it. You've got to raise the public awareness of the risk factor in and use protective measures. You've got to make certain that each individual, in his own little way, can try to avoid infection either from animal to human and from human to human. Okay, including the cadavers or corpse, mean dead persons. We've got to be aware of that.
Very well. Dr. Cummins?
Yes, I just want to let folks know that this virus, if it does come here, it's contagious. It's not airborne. It's from direct person to person through body fluids. And you have to take the necessary precautions, protect yourself, hand washing, try to avoid physical contact, try to prepare your own meals. Avoid bush meat for some persons who like all sorts of things. Try to avoid the bush meats and try to, if you know they have bats and so on, try to kill those sites, and or cook the bush meat properly, I guess. Okay, it's my hope that the government will take this topic serious and don't be reactive, as one caller puts it, and try to prevention is always better than cure. Take the necessary precautions by educating the populace, public awareness. You can't go wrong with encouraging the patient. More they know, more they're able to take necessary actions.
That's right.
They will able to look at the health facilities, ensure that the workers, the first line workers, that they are well equipped with necessary protective gear, so that they can able to attend to patients. Those funeral homes, they will have to be educated as to how to the dead, how to dispose of the body, and so there's a lot of work on the table. But if they start now, I mean, it hasn't come as yet. They can do it.
Very well. All right, viewers, that's all the time we have on Nation Watch today. And of course, we were discussing the topic Ebola. This discourse had started some 3 weeks ago, right, on this program, when we had first raised the topic as it relates to chikungunya and the non-public education about same. In studio with me is APNU members of Parliament, Dr. Karen Cummins and Dr. George Norton, and we hope that the information that we have provided for you thus far goes a far way in you protecting yourself and educating your loved ones around you about the preventative measures that ought to be put in place to prevent a spread of Ebola if it reaches the shores of Guyana. We mentioned before that Guyana's porous borders is wide open, and of course we are exposed. Those persons who have been trained to go at our various port of entries, they too are exposed because they don't have the protective gear. We've heard nothing about whether or not these protective gear have been acquired or whether they are in the country. But we hope that this would raise the awareness and that we would see a positive response from government. The Partnership for National Unity and members of Parliament, we've always been saying to the general public and particularly the government that we are here to work with you. We are here to work in collaboration